All right, guys, Mo Crawler. So we're back with the Phoenix Portal Kit, and we've got a new overdrive servo, because I think on the last one I told you that I smoked the overdrive servo. So you'll see I've got a tag on here. So I had to take everything apart, but I really like this method. So I just take a little piece of tape. This is pinstriping tape from Tamiya. I got it for painting bodies, but it's nice and small. And so I'm taking, I took all the componentry loose from the receiver because I wanted to wrap the wires here in some heat shrink because they're kind of exposed when you put the body on, and they just didn't look very good. So I'm going to wrap them in heat shrink, and hopefully that'll make them look a little better. I mean, I honestly, the idea is that you don't notice them at all just because they're black now. So I disconnected everything, but when I did that, I labeled each one because there's a lot of wires, and then all of these are extensions. So they all look exactly the same, right? If I only had, you know, a power coming out of the ESC or the receiver, or I mean, yeah, out of the ESC to the receiver, and then I had, a different color on the servo, then things would be simple. But these are all extensions, so they're all exactly the same. And it's kind of a wad of wires under here, to be honest, as far as which goes to which. So I just label them as I unplug them. That way I know where to plug them back in so that my radio will do the things that I think it's going to do whenever I hit the buttons that I have set up for it. So I went back into the radio. I turned down the endpoints on this one to 1 and 1, so it really probably shouldn't move at all. I'll have to, I guess, center it out whenever I attach the servo horn, which is going to be this guy. But for now, I think what we're going to do is plug all of this stuff back in. So this is 1, which would be the steering servo. That looks like it's 3. This is 2, so this is the ESC. This is 3. We'll get that guy in there. I don't remember. The winch, I think, is on 3. This one says 7, so I think this is the lights. So we're going to go way down here to 7 for that guy. I believe this is 4. Yeah, so this is the dig servo. He will go into 4. If we can get him lined up, he will at least. And then this guy is 5, and we are going to run him through this heat shrink because that's where he's going to end up. And I got 2 pieces because it's the distance that I have to cover kind of outside, in this area is longer than I can cover with just 1 piece. And I don't know, it's not going to shrink down quite enough to really get this, to get it tight on just 2 pieces of wire, because I've got, I think, 4 through here, and it's not quite tight on those, but it's the smallest heat shrink that I have that will go over the ends. So we're going to have to just be okay with it, I guess. So then this goes into 5, yes, 5. So we'll plug this guy into 5, and this is the problem with my trail rigs, because I like to have lights and I like to have winches, which are more stuff, more wires, right? So they can get pretty cluttered. But I think that's going to work. Let me grab a battery. And we will plug this guy in. Okay. Now A is going to be channel 5. So let's go back. Let's see, so there's our dig. Ooh, and that's under load. So I'm going to go in and turn that down as well, that endpoint. And that is this guy. We're going to turn him back down to 10. I think it's cylinder load, but I think it's less than it was. Okay, so now let's go to A. We'll turn him up to 10 and 10. Okay, we are getting just a little bit of movement now. So, perfect, and I made that a 2-position switch. So, let's get the servo horn installed. So it's going to go so it's like a tooth off, which is pretty common, at least for me. So it won't go straight up and down. If I get it on that tooth, it's a little eh. And if you pick it up and move it to get to the next tooth, it's a little eh, right? So I don't know which would be better. So we're just going to guess, and we're going to line it up that way. It's a little less radical as far as how off it is if we go that way. So we're gonna try it like that. And we will tighten the horn down. I don't honestly recall if 3-position is an option on that A button. I think you can do 2 or 3 position on any of the buttons on these Mias radios, but that might not be right. But there is technically 3 positions. There is technically 3 positions. And I think we have to move as well to get it to fully lock in. So that might be, this one's going to be interesting to set the endpoints on. But we know now that we're not smoking it, at least, which is better than we did the first time. So yeah, I don't even think I put power to it before I put it in place, which is a terrible idea with a servo. You should always put power to the servo to let it, come back around to 0 before you put a horn on it, before you connect it to anything. Because if you don't, you'll get exactly what I got, which was somehow in the process, right? Somewhere in between shipment or, who knows? The guy who put it in the plastic bag, if they just grab that end and just spin it, and it's not zeroed, as soon as power comes to it, it's going to try to center itself. And and if they spun it, 180 degrees, then you're 180 degrees off of where you need to be, and that means that it's going to try to correct itself, right? It's going to try to come back to 0. And if you're under load, it's just going to sit there and continue to try until it burns up, or hopefully you realize what's going on and stop it. So let's see here. I need to back this guy up, because I think we need to be moving. So I think we're still in the same. So let's, all right, I'm gonna have to play with this thing on the floor for just a minute to get things figured out a little bit, and I'll come back up and we'll talk about it once I get it adjusted a little bit. All right, I think we got it here. So you'll see if I hit A, oop. So that's regular overdrive. You can see the, well, you can't see the tires. You see the relative difference, and then put it in big OD. You see how much faster the front tires turn. So that's regular OD. And that appears to be pretty well set. And then we've got dig as well. So that's, I put that down here on this button, so you go forward, and then we engage dig. You can see him dragging, disengage dig, and he's turning again. There's a little bit of a weird spot in the programming of this, or in the setting of this. So if this overdrive is kind of in the center, it's in neutral, and you can actually lose front drive and keep rear drive at a certain spot in that motion there. So I think you can put them in neutral, but I don't know why you would want to do that. I mean, I guess there might be some, I'm sure somebody can come up with something, you know what I mean, some scenario where that would be beneficial. I can't think of one. I'm not saying there's not one, but I can't think of it. So, of course, I'm, trying to avoid that. So I'm just trying to get, in this little overdrive, big overdrive, and making sure that we're fully engaged and really getting those dogs to snap together whenever I hit the button. Same thing over here on the dig. It's appears to be fine. So it gets fiddly because the more you adjust this OD side, if you end up not far enough then you end up in neutral, and yeah, and then the dig acts weird, and then sometimes when you're on this side, if you engage the dig, so this is pretty fiddly. It had these features, so I added these features. To be honest, in this trail rig, and if I smoke another servo, I'm just telling you now, I'm going to lock this thing into small OD, and that's going to be the end of it. It doesn't appear to be getting crazy warm. So this one is just barely warm. This one is just barely warm. So we're going to let it go like it is for now. But like I said, I can tell you right now, if I smoke another servo, I mean, this is a trail rig. I do not need that big OD. I just don't need it. There's really, there's no need for big OD. I got the extra servo. Of course, I've already smoked one. Kind of fooling with it, but it's a learning experience, so I'm not mad about it. I'm just I'm just trying to learn what I can. So not mad about it, but I do not need it. So, if we get into a situation where I've smoked two servos, trying to get it to function properly, I will just lock it into small OD. If this was going to be, you know, a rock crawler, I would lock it into big OD, but it's not. It's going to be just a little rock crawler, just a trail truck with a little bit of rock crawling, right? So I'll lock it into small OD, and we will move on with dig only if necessary. So I'm going to get my heat gun, which is going to take a plug, and it's going to get loud, so I'm just going to shut the camera off for a minute. I'm going to heat shrink these two pieces together, covering that tube. I'm going to get this receiver back down in here. I'm going to put this top back on it, and I'll be back in just a minute. I want to show you the heat shrink tube and then show you the body down on top and show you what that looks like once we get that completed. So back in just a minute. All right, there he is all buttoned up. That's what I was going for there with the black heat shrink to try to, it's hard to see, isn't it? So that's what I was doing there, because it was just the, you know, red, black, and white wires, and then some orange and brown wires, and it was looking a little crazy back there. So I was just trying to hide those, kind of where they come out from under this box that's built in here back to the receiver box. So I think we accomplished that pretty well. And I put another zip tie up in here to kind of hold my voltmeter and the headlights and the taillights wiring together. So yeah, I think it's looking pretty good. And we've got dig and we've got 2 overdrives now. Like I said, not a huge fan of that overdrive thing. It's totally unnecessary on this truck for what I'm going to use it for. So if this guy continues to get hot, or if we end up smoking him at some point, he will go away, and we'll lock this OD into the small OD, which is the forward, and we'll take that little arm off there, and we'll just be done with it because we don't need it. So, I mean, if it's easy enough and it doesn't cause any problems, then, you know, it's kind of cool. Flip a button, hit a button, and, you know, I don't know. It's kind of a party trick, but we don't need it. So the other thing that I was going to say is the Holmes Hobbies 2-in-1. I've only had him here inside the house doing some little things as far as crawling, but I do have some, like the test board. I can run the 10 scales up that test board that I test the 24 scale tires on as well. And just kind of get a rough idea of where we're at. And he crawls pretty well as far as that board. So I think he'll be, you know, I think he'll be a totally competent trail truck, which is what I want him to be. So I'm happy with that. What I was surprised at was the lack of drag brake. So start to climb up. First of all, the motor, and it is calibrated. It is, as far as I can tell, the latest firmware. The firmware is a huge pain in the butt. On my laptop, it is difficult to understand for me what I'm supposed to do as far as the firmware. I can't get onto the Holmes Hobbies site because it says that it's not compatible for some reason. So there's another site that he sends you to. They just have some generic settings that you can put in there. I put the generic settings that he recommends. He's got a couple videos on these things, but he's got a video specifically on drag brake and how this thing doesn't have drag brake in the sense that most rock crawlers think of as drag brake. Okay, so it doesn't have an active brake where it's pulling power to keep the motor from turning while it's sitting still, if that makes sense. At least that's how I understand the video. That's how I understand his explanation of it, right? So I am, and I think most of us have probably been kind of ruined by Hobby Wing and their FOC and their drag brake. So the Hobby Wing, the Elites and the Fusion SEs, and I have an Elite Pro. I haven't run it yet, but I mean, I run the Pro all the time on Sport, and I run SEs on all the other trucks. So they have great drag brake. They have the FOC, which is really, really cool, and it's really good for rock crawling because you don't have to adjust your input, your throttle input as much, right? So if you get to a big rock and you're here, with this thing, you have to give it more so that it generates more power to pull the truck up and over. With FOC on a Hobby Wing SE or a Fusion Pro, if you just hold your finger in the same position, the motor will automatically make more power to maintain its speed, even with the given obstacle, right? So that can be good and bad, because if you don't notice that your wheel is completely bound in a V-shaped notch or something, or you get under an underhang, then it will just break parts, because it just continues to add power to try to maintain that vehicle's speed at whatever your throttle input is, regardless of the obstacle, right? So that can be bad, because you can break stuff because you don't see that it's not just a loss of traction, it's actually something physical that's binding a part of your truck, right? So that can be bad. But what it's good at is if you can see the whole truck and you see that it's not, in a bad obstruction, it'll just kind of do it for you. It's absolutely amazing. The first time I drove, motors with FOC, I was absolutely blown away, and I love it. I love it. So I'm sure there are people out there that say FOC is bad because, again, you can break parts, but I'm all for FOC personally. I'm a FOC fan. So now that when you buy a similarly priced 2-in-1, I expected there to be a really good drag brake and some sort of FOC feature. And I also want to say this. I was born and raised in Missouri. I love Missouri. I went to college in Columbia, so I am a Mizzou alum. I love Columbia. It's a great little town. It's a little hippy-dippy because it's a college town, but it's a great little town. And I love the fact that Holmes is in Columbia. I love the fact that he's a Missouri guy. I love the fact that there are small businesses, especially in Missouri, that are making products for these trucks. That's why this is staying in there. But it's a little weird. It doesn't have FOC. It doesn't have much of a drag brake. I watched this video and I did everything. I plugged in the auxiliary and then unplugged it. I did everything that he said to do. The drag brake is still not great. The low speed control is still not as good as a Hobby Wing. So on a trail rig, I think it's going to be fine. I don't think you're ever going to really notice, and if you get into a real rock crawling situation out on the trail, I think this guy, he's not going to do great anyway. He's big, full fendered. He's big, heavy body. He's short travel, all of the things. He does have portals, which is good, but beyond that, he's really not set up to be a competitive type rock crawling truck. So this motor and this vehicle is going to be just fine. And I like to support, Holmes, because again, they're a Missouri company. They're in Columbia, and I love supporting local and, homegrown to me folks. But if you want a 2-in-1 to put into a competitive rock crawler, I don't think this is your guy. And again, it pains me to say it. If it was your guy, if I thought it was your guy, if I thought that the Holmes was a really good all-around solution, even if it was a little more than a Hobby Wing, I would say go buy the Holmes, because again, they're in Missouri. I'm trying to support, local folks. I'm trying to support small businesses. It's just, in my opinion, it's just not for rock crawling purposes. It's not as good as the Hobby Wings. You know, again, it lacks that drag brake, and you know, he says if your gearing is correct, so we could gear this thing down and maybe gain some of the passive drag brake that it has. But if you're, you know, I mean, I built this from the kit, right? Like, so I'm going to pay the same amount for your 2-in-1. It's bigger. It's a little harder to fit in place. The control is a little jumpy. It doesn't have FOC, and I have to go buy a different spur and pinion to gear the truck down so that it will have more of a drag brake. It's just like, I'm sorry, dude, but I can spend the same money and buy a Fusion Elite or a Fusion Pro or, you know, an SE 1800, and it's going to have the FOC, it's going to have the drag brake, and it's going to be great. So what are we doing here, right? One thing I will say about the Hobby Wings, I've had 2 of them now. I know, I take that back, I've had 1. But I have seen online multiple. I've seen online probably at least a dozen. Let me grab, so we're going to swap this guy out for Sport real quick because I want to show you what I'm talking about. Most of you know, if you have a Hobby Wing SE, so this is a Pro, right? This is a Fusion Pro. This is the button. This is the on-off button, and it's where you plug your program card in, right? This button, the bottom will bulge, it will smoke, it'll make a popping sound, and the thing is done. That's why I recommend, if you buy one of these Hobby Wings, if you buy Fusion, SE, Elite, Pro, whatever, if you buy one of them, my recommendation is buy it off Amazon or buy it from A-Main or some other hobby shop that you believe in their warranty, okay? You could buy it direct from Hobby Wing because I've heard Hobby Wing is good at warranting them as well. But they do pop. I had one pop on crash. So put it in, drove it around the floor, took it out into the living room in the basement here. It's my son's truck, so I handed him the controller. I said, drive it around for a bit. He took 1 lap around the living room in the basement, heard a pop, stopped working, didn't know what was going on, walked over there, smelled the smoke, brought it in here, opened it up, and that switch had a bulge at the bottom, so something inside had, and we heard a pop when it happened, but they just fry on the inside. I don't know if they're wired improperly or what's going on at the factory, but those switches do pop. I have heard that you can just cut that switch off and wire it up, and it will continue to work. You won't have a way to program it though with the card, is the problem with that. So, but I bought mine off Amazon, the one that popped. You know, did a return through Amazon. I had the new motor before I even shipped the old one back. So that's how good the Amazon exchange system or return system worked. But but yeah, that can happen, and it does happen with some amount of frequency. Now, hopefully they're, you know, taking those lessons, and you know, that will stop in the future. But right now, as far as I know, it's still a thing with the Hobby Wing Fusions. So I guess the moral of the story is nothing's perfect, right? I have not heard a bad word about Holmes 2-in-1s, you know, shorting out all of a sudden. They don't have an on-off switch, right? So I guess maybe that's part of the reason that they don't. But I also would say that the overall experience with the Holmes 2-in-1 is not, to me, as good as the Hobby Wings. So, and you know, you're buying from China when you buy the Hobby Wing rather than buying local, which I would rather do. I mean, I've had a bunch of Holmes Hobby stuff over the years. I continually try to give them a chance. You know what I mean? And I will continue to do so. I mean, again, I like that he's, you know, from Colombia. I like that he's small business. You know, he's obviously really, really into the hobby. So it seems like a nice enough guy, right? So, I mean, I love it. I would love to buy all my electronics from Holmes, but I have not had great luck. I think their brush motors are great, but I'm not really into brush motors much. So I've used some of their outrunners. I think for outrunners, they've got a new, they've got new ESCs now that aren't loud, because back in like 2018, I had a couple of them that were outrunners, and they whined. They sounded horrible. They just like you didn't want to be around them, and if you had one, nobody wanted to be around you when you were running it because they were so obnoxiously loud. I think they fixed that. So I think on the sensorless outrunner, if you get a Holmes ESC, I don't know if you need a BEC with those or not anymore. They may have fixed that, but back in the day, you had to have a BEC as well, and then get one of their little revolver outrunners. I think those are probably great for, especially for competitive rock crawling, because they're real light. Everything's real lightweight as far as that goes. But they're 2-in-1. Trail trucks, good to go. Comp crawlers, I would say, probably lean more toward the hobby wing. Okay, last thing is final party trick check. So we've got C. C is headlights, taillights, and rock lights. So that's C. We've got out, and in on our winch. So we do have a winch. We've got the fair lead now. I think that's it for party tricks. So the party trick that I was trying to show you, I didn't show you. I set it all up just to show you this party trick. So can you see him through there? There he is. There's your voltmeter going through the dash. Yeah, so